Welcome back, everybody, to the spread option here on the CFB Nation channel. And look who I have with me. I got my guy, Vince D'Addario. Welcome back, man. How you feeling?
Hey, coming off a stint on the injured list. I'm back. I'm excited. I think I can actually sit here long enough to get through a show, which I'm pumped about. And, watching you do the solo show last week, you did a great job, but it was some pretty severe FOMO for me. I was fear of missing out. Like I was like, this is our show and I'm not on it, and it's not right. So I'm fired up, man. I'm ready to get back at it.
Love that you're back, man. And I'm happy that I don't have to talk by myself for 35 minutes straight, because that is a task in and of itself. So I'm happy to have you back, man. But we're in good shape. You were listed as probable, elevated to probable at the start of this week.
That's right.
Game time decision. You were ready to rock and roll, and I love that.
Ready to roll, baby. And it's going to be a fun weekend. Obviously, our other gig is following Notre Dame. So we got Notre Dame, Boise State, and we'll probably talk about that one here in a little bit. But so I'm back in the chair, man. I'm ready to roll, post-game show, all that fun stuff. So it's going to be fun, but we got to get this thing kicked off with a little spread option. And we got to talk about last week and what we hit on, which was more than we missed on, by the way. Another good week for the boys.
Sure was. It sure was. So diving into this, one of the first games that we talked about was Notre Dame on the road against Arkansas. We talked about two different player props. CJ Carr's over, and his line was set at 244.5 passing yards. That hit in a big way.
Yeah, that hit in the first half, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, it sure did. Ended the day with 354 passing. I won $514 off the Notre Dame game.
Dude, I learned my lesson last week. I had like an 8-leg parlay. 7 of those legs were Notre Dame related. One of those legs was Arkansas related. Guess which one didn't hit? The Arkansas related leg. I'm done putting the other team in my parlay. I'm just going Notre Dame from here on out. I got to make some money, Trev. I got to make a little money. I got doctor's bills to pay for, you know?
Well, hopefully we'll get you squared away this week. One of the other player props that we talked about was a Jadarian Price anytime touchdown, which, I mean, we're kind of getting into the territory of death taxes, and 4 and 24 are going to find the end zone.
Yeah.
I mean, Jeremiah Love, Jadarian Price have combined for 16 touchdowns in 3 games.
Well, as we're watching that game, and I'm watching, first of all, Jadarian Price gets in the end zone first, then they go to review, and they call it back. I'm like, oh. And then Jeremiah Love goes for 4 straight touchdowns, I believe it was. He gets 4. I'm like, I only needed him to get 1. Let's not be greedy. I need Jadarian Price to get in the end zone. And then, of course, you got the turnover at the very end of the first half, and then he takes basically a swing pass, the rest of the way, makes Arkansas look absolutely silly, and scores a touchdown. So he gets his before halftime. So it really wasn't all that much of a hold your breath moment, but I also knew the offense probably wasn't going to be on the field with the first teamers much longer. So, but you're right. Death taxes and those 2 boys getting in the end zone is pretty high probability. And I would say that that's a high probability bet going into this weekend as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I bet on Jadarian Price to have a touchdown in the first half, and that's how it hit.
Oh, well.
Yep.
There you go.
Yep. It was fantastic. But all in good fun. The next game that we talked about, Vince, was LSU on the road against Ole Miss. And the first one we talked about might be one of the best names among starting quarterbacks in college football. Ole Miss's starting quarterback, Trinidad Chambliss. His over-under rushing yards was set at 52.5, and that hit. He had 71 rushing yards on the afternoon. And we got our question answered, Vince. LSU still can't figure out how to defend a mobile quarterback.
Not surprised, but yeah, that's a pretty solid hit for the Ole Miss quarterback for sure.
Sure is. The other one that we talked about, and this one was a little bit new because I was nervous. We haven't done unders much.
Right.
And because I like to stay away from unders because it feels like you're rooting for somebody to do bad. But I mean, when it's a Brian Kelly coach team, I don't really stay away from rooting for somebody to not do great. You know what I mean? But we had Garrett Nussmeier's his passing yards line was set at 286.5, which I thought was crazy because he had yet to pass for over 275 yards in the season. And that includes games against like Louisiana Tech. And if you would have taken his under, that would have hit because he finished the afternoon with 197 passing yards.
Not good.
Nah.
One of the many reasons that they lost that game.
Agreed. And unfortunately, their head coach threw him under the bus once again in the postgame press conference. But if you are a Notre Dame fan, that should come to no surprise to you.
Correct.
Now, this game was a little rough. We talked Ohio State at Washington, and the first one that we talked about was Damon Williams, the quarterback for Washington. His rushing yards line was set at 40.5, and it missed by about 69 yards. And yes, you heard that correctly, because he ended the afternoon with negative 28 rushing yards. So it's just one of those painful reminders that sack yardage goes against rushing yards for quarterbacks in college, which may or may not play another factor later on in today's show. But with that being said, that one did not hit. And then we also talked about, I can't keep saying we, man. I can't throw you under the bus for these misses. It was just me. Who are we kidding? But I talked about Carnell Tate anytime touchdown. He scored in the first 3 games of the season for the Buckeyes. He didn't score, unfortunately, against Washington on the road. So we went over in the Ohio State game. But we turned our luck around in the Oregon-Penn State game. And needed a little bit of overtime to do it, Vince.
Man, no kidding.
Needed some overtime to do it. But the first player prop that I talked about was Katron Allen anytime touchdown. That hit on the first possession of overtime. I won a little parlay. I think I sent it to you on the Oregon-Penn State game. And it was one of those games, man, where it was like, you know, when you sit down and you talk betting with friends, it's like, okay, all I need is this goes into overtime. And then the first possession of overtime, Katron Allen scores. And then on the next possession of overtime, I need Gary Bryant to catch one pass for 10 yards, and then he's going to hit his. And somehow that is exactly how it's
amazing. Out. That's a good bit. That's a good bet right there. That's a good win. That's a good win.
It felt good. And those were the 2 player props that we talked about, man. The other one was Gary Bryant, Oregon's wide receiver, over 28.5 receiving yards that hit. He had 55 yards and a touchdown. So very happy with that one. And then just to bring us back down to earth before we start talking locks and dogs of the week, Alabama at Georgia. I talked about Jeremy Bernard's over 57.5 receiving yards. Ryan Williams has been off to a weird season with Alabama so far. I think I saw a graphic in the Alabama-Georgia game where he leads the SEC in drops. And that is not something that I had Ryan Williams tagged for.
Man, that's not the category you want to be leading the SEC in.
No, it is not. But unfortunately, that was for him. So I wanted to bet on Jeremy Bernard because he's kind of been the go-to wide receiver. Now, this missed. He had 35 yards receiving, but then he also had 20 rushing yards. There was a heavy emphasis on trying to get him the ball in some jet sweeps. So I don't know if Ryan Grubb or Kalen DeBoer saw something that they liked, but that ended up missing. The other one that missed, and this missed again in a big way. I picked Gunnar Stockton over 214.5 passing yards. And I remember somebody in the live chat saying that's bold. And I was like, it is a little bold, but you know what? Based on how the game went last year, Georgia's at home, might be playing with a little bit of fire. I was wrong. And Gunnar Stockton ended the game with 130 passing yards. So
that's rough.
He was well short.
That's rough. Do Georgia fans still think that he was a better choice than Carson Beck? Are they still there?
Probably.
Okay, just checking.
Who knows?
All right.
Who knows? Now we're getting into some locks of the week. My lock of the week was the over 63.5 in the Notre Dame-Arkansas game. Now that hit. Total of 69 points were scored. No thanks to Arkansas, might I add.
Right.
Thankfully, Notre Dame scored 56 points on the afternoon, so the over for that Notre Dame game hit, Vince.
Yeah, my lock of the week. Hey, look, folks, my locks of the week have not been great. I'm 1-5 in locks of the week, but and no help last week either for that record. I had Florida State against Virginia. I thought that Florida State was going to come out, take care of some business against Wahoo Nation, and they did not. They didn't even win the game because they lost in overtime 46-48. So they clearly did not cover the 6.5 points that they needed to because they also didn't win the game. So Florida State's going to come back around for me. I'm a very petty bettor as well. And so this week I'm going very much against Florida State in my lock of the week. So that, you burn me once, fine, but I'm going to come right back at you and hope that, you can help me out in a negative way. So,
yeah, I get that. My buddy Bryce, he also bet. I think he had Florida State money line.
Yeah,
so he understands. That one was crazy. Now, dogs of the week, and Vince, I think you're going to enjoy this conversation. I am not. My dog of the week was Washington plus 8.5 against Ohio State. And look, I was playing into the, Washington hasn't lost at home since, November of 2021. And,
Right.
you know, and unfortunately, the Huskies let me down. Ohio State won by 18. They won 24-6. So my dog of the week missed.
So my dog of the week, I took the Oklahoma State Cowboys against Baylor. They were being given 20.5 points. I thought that was a pretty decent number, even though they no longer have a head coach. So I was hoping that they could keep it within the 20.5. They did, barely. They lost by 18. So you still had 2.5 points to play with right there. So if you took Oklahoma State plus the 20.5, ding, 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 you are a winner. And we're back on track with my dogs of the week.
We sure are. Look, getting into the records, player props, we're 27-17 right now. We went from 21-14 last week to 27-17 this week. I think that's good progress, Vince.
Yeah, man, that's good. That's quality.
Pretty decent progress. I am now 3-3 on locks of the week. Vince, you already talked about where you're at in locks of the week, and I won't make you listen to me.
That's rough.
Repeat what that is for you. Dogs of the week, I'm now back down to 500 at 3-3. But listen, we talk a lot about betting mortgages, and if you don't buy a house, if you don't have a house purchased, you can bet your rent, if you so please. I would follow Vince on Dogs of the Week. I'm serious. Like at this point, you know how good this guy's getting? He wasn't even on the show last week and his Dog of the Week hit.
That's right, baby.
I knew I was rocking a solo show. I was doing all this research. And I was sitting here and I was like, oh man, I have so many notes. And obviously that didn't matter. And Vince just put his in this Google Doc that we shared and his hit. So I'd trail Vince on his Dogs of the Week.
It's going to be interesting this week. My Dog of the Week this week was definitely a gut take. So we'll talk about it when we get there, but there was definitely some emotion involved. I'll just put it that way.
Fair enough. Well, Vince, let's dive into some of the games that we're talking about here. The first game is Boise State on the road against number 21 Notre Dame. Now, yes, we are a Notre Dame affiliated podcast, but I would also make the argument, I think Notre Dame is one of the easiest teams to bet on this season in college football, just based on what they've been able to do. So real quick rundown of the big three. Notre Dame is favored by 20.5 points. Obviously, they're favored in the money line, minus 1,200 odds. Save your money. I wouldn't put that into anything. And then the over-under is set at 62.5.
Yeah, this is the big three here is very interesting. I mean, I like all of them because I think Notre Dame is going to put up some points here. And I also think Boise State's going to score some points. I mean, I'm still not convinced. We had a lot of talks this week about has the defense turned the corner and, all of these different things. I don't think so, at least not yet. Good opportunity here with a very good group of five team, right? At least traditionally. They're maybe not living up to standards this year, and that's okay. They're still a very, very good program. And so you can still measure some success playing against the Broncos from Boise State. So I like these. I think Notre Dame will cover here. Again, stay away from the money line. That number doesn't help you. Minus 1,200 will not help you. Even in a parlay, you're not moving the odds enough to make that worthwhile. But the over-under set at 62.5, I think that's a fairly good take. And I would throw that into a parlay as well.
Well, hear me out, Vince. You just have $10,000 laying around. You could put that on Notre Dame money line and win $800 if you'd like.
I mean, I've got 10 grand laying around, no problem. I mean, I am an educator, so clearly I've got money just all over the place.
Bang! You heard it here first.
Hemorrhaging money.
Listen, some of the two of the player props that we're talking about here for the Notre Dame Boise State game. The first one, Jeremiah Love to score 2 touchdowns.
Woo!
I know. I want to say that it's gutsy, but he's had 2 touchdowns every game since the Miami game. Now, It is a miracle what happens when you give one of the best players in the country the football.
Correct.
A little bit more. He had 2 touchdowns against Texas A&M. He had 2 against Purdue, and he had 4 in the first half against Arkansas. So I was just going to go anytime Jeremiah Love touchdown. It was minus 500.
Wow, really? Those odds aren't great.
No, just not. So first one, Jeremiah Love, 2 touchdowns. Second one, we're going back to old reliable Vince. Malachi Fields over 53.5 receiving yards.
He's hit for me every week. I've had him as part of a parlay every single week. He has hit those yards every single week, sometimes on one play. But he has been over every single time, and they are slowly raising his number every single week, but they're still not getting to a place where I wouldn't touch this, right? So 53.5 is a pretty solid number and one that I would definitely take a look at. It was hovering around 40, 45 there for a while, earlier on in the season. So they have raised it a little bit, but he's been over 70 yards receiving in the last 3 games. So we know that he is a very popular target for CJ Carr, and 53.5 is a number that I would absolutely take.
Sometimes he does it catching a pass on a fake punt.
Yeah, exactly.
So that's just how well betting has been going for Notre Dame. Now, one of the ones that I am staying away from, and here's why. It's not because I don't think that he's capable of getting 264 passing yards. CJ Carr's over-under is set at 263.5. I just don't know how this game is going to go. I don't. Now, I'm extremely confident that he gets over 220, but when you look at his alternate passing yard odds, it's just not worth it to take him at 220 unless you want to build out a very lengthy parlay, and that's just one of the throw-in legs. But I don't know how much he's going to play in this game. I don't want to sound overly cocky and say Notre Dame's pulling their starters at halftime. I don't think that at all. I very much could see this a game, though, where Jeremiah Love, Jadarian Price take it over on the ground, and CJ Carr's hovering somewhere around 220 to 230. Again, wouldn't be surprised if he goes over 264, but that's one of the reasons why I'm just staying away from this completely.
Well, and the problem with some of these big numbers like CJ Carr's number here is, there's a realistic chance that Notre Dame has pulled their starters early, right? Halftime, middle of the third quarter, those are all possibilities here. Because again, Boise State's a really good program. I'm not sure they're a great team this year. They have the ability to make some noise here. They absolutely do. But, Notre Dame scored on their first 6 drives last week against an SEC team on the road. Now they're coming home. They're playing a group of 5 team in Boise State, who arguably is better than some Power 4 teams, right? It's still Boise State. But when you're looking at these numbers, if you were going to guarantee me that CJ Carr was going to play the entire game, I would take the over on the 263.5. I would, because I think he'd get it, right? You can't guarantee me that. So that's why we're staying away from this one.
Very well said. Very well said. The next game that we're talking about, number 9 Texas is on the road in the Swamp against the Florida Gators. Quick rundown of the Big Three. Texas is favored by 5.5 points. To bet on Texas money line, it's at minus 210, and the over/under for this game is set at a shocking 42.5. I thought that was interesting. I understand why after going back and looking at both of these offenses, if we're being honest.
Yeah.
But that is a shocking over/under for this game.
Well, and it's interesting because all the hype that Texas obviously got in the preseason, being the number 1 team, and, Arch Manning just hasn't really done Arch Manning things that people thought he was going to do with this offense, but they're still a top 10 team right now, right? Are they ripe for the picking? That's the question, right? Going into the Swamp against an unranked Florida team who has talent, but have they really kind of put it together yet, right? So they are on upset alert, if you will. There's no doubt about it. I think the 5.5 number for Texas is kind of a tempting number. If you think Texas is who you think Texas is, I think winning by a touchdown is a very doable scenario for the Longhorns against this Florida team, because if you get them down early, I think they stay down. If you let them hang around, that's when you're in trouble. So I like that 5.5 number. Other than that, the over/under, I don't know that I have faith in either offense to get to where they need to get to 42.5. That's the problem. That's one I'd probably stay away from.
Yeah.
But I do like Texas minus the 5.5.
I'm with you. Player props for this one was also difficult because I just don't feel confident betting on any offensive player from Florida, because that offense this year has been really bad. Really bad. But then we just don't know that much about Texas. I'm not putting too much weight into what they did against Sam Houston and San Jose State.
Exactly.
That's tough. And their last outing against a Power 4 opponent was over a month ago, which is insane when they opened the season against Ohio State. So some might call this a cop-out, but the 2 player props that I have, they're both Arch Manning. And yes, I understand some people think he's overhyped, whatnot, but I like some of these lines. His over-under rushing yards is set at 24.5, and he went over 38 against Ohio State. Ohio State, if anybody's been keeping track, it's a pretty darn good defense.
Mm-hmm.
I think they're the number 1 defense in the country right now. So we're talking about a dual threat quarterback in Damon Williams, had negative 28 rushing yards against his defense. Arch Manning in week 1 on the road had 38. I like Arch Manning rushing yards. I also like him for an anytime touchdown because he's the only for sure running back that I have faith that ball carrier, I should say, that I have faith that he gets into the end zone. They're kind of not by committee, but they have Quintravion Wisner and CJ Baxter. And I just don't feel comfortable betting with either of them. So I also have an Arch Manning anytime touchdown, Vince.
Yeah, that one makes a lot of sense for sure. And to your point earlier, let's keep away from Florida's receiving core and really their offense in general. We don't know how Lagway is going to perform. 5 interceptions against LSU, 61 passing yards against Miami on 23 attempts. Like, are you kidding me? That is not exactly something that instills any confidence in any better of an offense for Florida. And Texas's defense is pretty decent, and I think they're going to make Florida earn every yard that they get. Where are they going to get the yards? That's the biggest question. And so I would, we're going to stay away from anything offensive because their offense is offensive. That's the problem.
Vince, averaging 2.6 yards a pass is insanity.
That's insanity. That's 5.
That's so bad.
That's like 8 feet. That's 8 feet. Right? Like,
that's that educator brain going to work, bro. I see you doing that quick conversion. Come on.
I'm like, you can like reach out and like hand a ball 8 feet, and you're talking about that's their average length of pass. Yeah. That's not great. That is not great.
Yeah, that's really, really bad. CJ Carr was a redshirt freshman and passed for over 200 yards against Miami on the road.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's not great, Vince. That's definitely not great. But one thing that we are hoping that is going to be great is the third game that we are covering, and that is the number 16 Vanderbilt Commodores on the road in Tuscaloosa against the now, once again, back in the top 10, ranked Alabama Crimson Tide. Quick rundown of the big three here, Vince. Alabama is favored by 10.5 points. If you bet on their money line, it's minus 400 odds. Don't love that. And then the over-under is set at 55.5.
That's a lot.
Yeah,
55.5 is a decent sized number for this game. This game by itself is just kind of, you don't know what you're going to get, especially after last year. Mm-hmm. I'll get more into that later. Hint, hint. This game is kind of an enigma for me across the board. But you got a couple good player props here that you want to shout out with the possibility of hitting.
I do. First one's Isaiah Horton, a wide receiver for Alabama. His over-under for receiving yards is set at 49.5. In his last 3 games, he's had 51, 48 against Wisconsin, I believe, and 65 against Georgia on the road in Athens. Again, this is one of those where, big picture, I love what Alabama's receiving core is made up of. Jeremy Bernard, Ryan Williams, Isaiah Horton. But Ryan Williams just hasn't been that player yet for Alabama that we expected him to be this season. So I really like Isaiah Horton's over in receiving yards. And then on the flip side of the ball,
this is an interesting one. I really like this one.
Diego Pavia, his total yards, so passing plus rushing yards, is set at 272.5 on FanDuel. In his last 2 games, he's had 331 total yards and 400 total yards. This came down to, I think, Vegas putting a lot of faith into Alabama's defense. And big picture, I understand why, especially after holding Georgia to 20 points. But I don't know if that win spoke more about Georgia's offense or Alabama's defense. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And so, look, if Vanderbilt's going to have any hope of beating Alabama or making this game close and covering, hint, hint, which we might talk about later as well, Diego Pavia is going to have to basically do what he did for this offense last season. So I like him over his total yards at 272.5, Vince.
Well, and they're going to throw the ball around, obviously. They want to get the ball in the air. They want to be able to push it down the field. But, Pavia is also going to scramble. And there's going to be design runs. And there's going to be all these different things. And look, you can say what you want to about Diego Pavia and some of his off-the-field stuff and all of that. But he tends to get his, as they say. Like, he's going to get some rushing yards. He's going to get some passing yards. He is a creator of offense. And 272.5 yards is not out of this world. Like, I do think that this is a very, very reachable number. I like that number for Diego Pavia for sure.
If I get the Dog of the Week's champions seal of approval, take that bet, ladies and gentlemen. Take that bet. Now, One of the things that we are staying away from, though, and I talked about this last week, I'm still not touching Alabama rushing props. I'm still not sold on their run game, nor do I think that they have a heavy emphasis on trying to establish the run this year because they have a receiving core that consists of Ryan Williams, Jeremy Bernard, Isaiah Horton. They just haven't looked like they've tried to establish the ground game, and they're rotating between a couple of different backs, too. I'm not touching their rushing props. I just don't trust it, Vince.
I get it. It makes a lot of sense. There's a lot to not trust in this game, and I'll speak to that a little bit more a little bit later on. There's a lot I would keep away from here, but I agree with you on the Alabama rushing props. Game number 4, a little battle of Florida. We got Miami on the road. They're number 3 against Florida State, number 18. The spread is 4.5 in favor of Miami. The money line is obviously in favor of Miami at -182. Not a bad number there. The over-under set at 53.5.
This one's interesting, Vince. This one's really interesting, and I think Florida State's loss to Virginia last week makes this even more interesting.
Yeah.
Because Florida State will do one of two things. I think that they will either rally around that loss and say that they played a Friday night game and overlooked a quality opponent on the road, or it's going to be the start of a downfall with a team made up mostly of transfer portal players. And we've seen that how many times before in the past, Vince.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it's also a healthy conversation to have around who is Miami. Is Miami that team? How are they on offense? We know their defense is good. I'm still not completely sold on this unit either. So player props for this game were a little difficult, but I have 2, and they're both around Miami's offense. First one, running back Mark Fletcher. His over-under rushing yards is set at 80.5. This over would have hit for Mark Fletcher in his last 3 games. He went for 86, 120, and 116 respectively against Bethune-Cookman. Yes, I know, but here's the thing. Here's a promising thing. The lowest total he had was against Bethune-Cookman. He went for $120 against USF and 116 yards against Florida. I like Mark Fletcher's over in his rushing yards in this one because I think Miami's going to try to establish a ground game, especially considering they're on the road against Florida State.
Yeah, the other player prop is the Malachi Fields of Miami, as far as you just take it because it'll probably hit. And that's Malachi Toney, and they've got his number at 59.5. He's gone for 82, 80, and 66 to start the season. He is almost a guarantee. He is a safety net. I mean, just take it. Just take it. He's fast in space. He gets open. They're not long passes. They're not like he doesn't have to do anything crazy to make these catches. It's just a matter of he's going to be open. He's going to get his yards, and 60 yards is not a lot of yards to get in the slot. So yeah, take Malachi Toney and run to the bank to collect your money.
Yeah, agreed. And unfortunately, still to this day, his best game statistically was in week 1 against the Fighting Irish.
Of course it was.
Still hurts. Still hurts. But one keep away from this game, I am not touching with a 10-foot pole Thomas Castellanos rushing yards. And here's why. Yes, I understand he's a dual-threat quarterback, but I think Miami has one of the best defensive lines in college football. And as we know, and as I learned last week with Damon Williams, sacks go against rushing yards for quarterbacks in college. Florida State gave up 19 total pressures against Virginia's defensive line. That is a crazy number.
Mm-hmm.
And Virginia's defensive line does not have Akeem Mesidor, Reuben Bain, or Justin Scott. I'm not touching this again.
Nope.
Would I be surprised if the over hits? No, because Castellanos is a dynamic athlete.
Sure.
But I'm not putting all of my faith just in that because Damon Williams is also a dynamic athlete. And he was 69 yards short of his 40.5 yard over under last week. So I'm not touching that one, Vince. But as we know, to wrap up today's show, we go through some locks and drops. You ready to start talking locks of the week, Vince?
I am 100% ready to talk locks because I'm 1-5 or whatever in locks. So take this for what it's worth when we get to mine. But you go ahead and lead us off here with your lock of the week.
Well, I will lead us off considering I'm sitting at an impressive 3-3.
Hey, again, I think people need to understand going 500 when you're betting, that's a win.
That
right?
is.
Because you're in theory, you're winning more money than you're putting down. And so if you've only lost 3 and you've won 3, you're in the black, which is where you want to be. So 3-3 is freaking good, man.
You're right, Vince. I needed that confidence boost for
You're
today.
welcome.
I appreciate that.
It's what I do. It's what I do.
My gosh, quick with math. yards to feet conversions. You're a confidence booster. I needed this guy back. Here we go. Lock of the week, Iowa State money line. It was plus 102, which I thought was interesting. One of the reasons why I like this for my lock of the week is because I just love the odds.
Yeah.
But Iowa State's undefeated. They're 5-0. And look, they're on the road against Cincinnati. And Cincy has surprised some people this year. They started out 3-1. Iowa State's 5-0. They're 2-0 in the conference. I like the odds. And I think this is going to look relatively similar to their game against Nebraska, Cincinnati's game against Nebraska. I think it's going to be kind of ugly. It's going to be a lot of punts. And that's the type of game that Iowa State wins, man. It is. I mean, maybe I'm just not completely bought in on the Cincy hype, but I go back through and I look who they beat this season. They lost to Nebraska in week 1, and their 3 wins, they beat Bowling Green at home by 14. Ooh. They beat Northwest State. I'm assuming that's an FCS school, 70-0.
Agreed.
Now, impressive win. They did go on the road and beat Kansas 37-34, but as we've seen, Kansas doesn't have a defense.
Yeah, they're not really living up to the hype this year.
No. So I like Iowa State. I like Iowa State money line lock of the week.
I'm actually very surprised that Cincinnati's favored in this game. It's only 1.5, and I get it. They're at home and all of those different things, but that's a good lock of the week for the odds, right? Like it's a good one to go get after because of the odds, which is always something fun to find on an odds show. So like, yeah, well done there, sir. My lock of the week, I'm going back to the Miami and Florida State game, and Miami is giving 4.5 points here. I think Miami is way better than 4.5 points against Florida State. Now, Florida State and Miami specifically has not really been tested since the Notre Dame game, as I mentioned before, and this is a big game for them, right? Miami, Florida State's a big game. And how are they going to do on the road, hostile environment, all the cliches, you throw the records out, blah, 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 blah. But this is a big game, not only because it's a battle for Florida, which I get, it's also a battle for conference supremacy as well, to a degree. So this is a big game for Miami. I think this is a statement game for Miami. So that's the way I'm looking at this. I think Miami is going to try to make a statement in this game. I think they win by more than 4.5. This is my lock. They're on a roll. It's a huge game for them on the road. I think they come in, they make the statement, they win by more than 4.5. So my lock is Miami to beat Florida State by more than 4.5.
I love it. Let's end that streak, Vince. Let's this is the journey to 500, baby. I love it.
Let's go.
Drop of the week, Vince. And I know this isn't one that we typically, I didn't feel comfortable, not comfortable, but I don't love keeping like a record for drop of the week.
Yeah, because it's weird because we're telling you to drop it, but we're not saying, well, it's either going to hit or it's not going to hit. So there's really no way to harness whether it's hitting or not, because we're telling you to stay away from it, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, I agree. This isn't really one you can keep track of, but it's still fun to talk about.
It sure is. Now, I don't know how much fun this game is going to be to watch, but my drop of the week, I'm not touching Clemson minus 14.5 against North Carolina. I understand the stigma around North Carolina. Bill Belichick is kind of the laughing stock of college football right now. He's just kind of parading his, third of his age girlfriend around the sidelines. And it's weird. It's a very weird situation.
Weird is a great word for it. It is. It's just weird. And it's not like they're stacking the W's to back it up. So.
No. But with that being said, Clemson this season has been garbage. Mm-hmm. And I, for one, is probably the most shocking team this season in college football.
Agreed.
But I have no idea who either of these teams are. I very well could see Clemson winning by 2 scores.
They should. Look, they should win by 2 scores.
Exactly.
But I'm not convinced that they will. That's the problem.
Right. Just like they shouldn't have needed. Listen, if Clemson was favored by 14.5 points at home to Troy, which I guarantee they probably were, that wouldn't have hit either.
Mm-hmm.
That's insane. You needed a 17-point third quarter against Troy. Mm-hmm. You lose to Georgia Tech on a last-second field goal, and then in a get-right game against Syracuse at home, you get absolutely ran off the field.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not touching this one because I have zero confidence in either team to do anything.
Yep.
So, yeah.
So my drop of the week, I'm going back to the Alabama Vanderbilt game. This one, we all remember last year, right? Well, Alabama remembers last year too, but so does Vanderbilt. And so this one is going to be very interesting. It's not a game I would touch. It's the start of a brutal stretch, first of all, for Vanderbilt. They've got Alabama, LSU, Missouri, and Texas all in a row. So in a few weeks, when we're talking about Vanderbilt, I will probably be taking the opposition to cover because I just don't know how they're going to be able to sustain that schedule. But right now, this is the beginning of that stretch. And so they'll still have everything that they need to have, which is what makes me very nervous about this game. We talked about Diego Pavia and what he can do and how he's just kind of a magician back there and defies the odds and does all these different things. He could do enough to beat Alabama. I mean, it's definitely possible. Alabama's favored by 10.5 here. And so that's a decent size number. Could Vanderbilt get inside that? Maybe. Could Alabama blow out Vanderbilt? Maybe. Could Vanderbilt just win outright based on last year? Maybe. It's too many maybes for me. Like I am staying so far away from this game. I think it'll be fun to watch potentially. It's one that I will keep my eye on during the day. But this is not one that I'm putting any money on because I just don't know, based on last year, based on what I've seen so far this year, I just don't know what this game is going to do. So I am staying away from this one.
Let's talk some dogs of the week, Vince.
This is where I thrive, baby. But I'm going to let you lead off. Who's your dog of the week?
For my dog of the week, we are going back to the Alabama Vanderbilt game, Vince.
Look at you. Look at you.
I know it. I really want to start taking head on this underdog thing. I do, because now that the college football season's starting to heat up, I don't know if there's going to be as many like
like the big number ones.
Yeah, like the Old Dominions versus Penn State's. I mean, Lord only knows who they play this week. It might be my intramural college flag football team, but who knows? But with that being said, I like Vanderbilt plus 10.5, and here's why. This is a good Vanderbilt team, and it's taken me some time to get used to it too. It really has. But you go back and you look at what they did this season. Offensively, they have put out an outstanding amount of points. I'm not putting too much weight into what they did against Charleston Southern. I'm not. But you score 44 on the road against Virginia in back-to-back road games, Vince. Vanderbilt has outscored their opponents 75-27 against Virginia Tech and South Carolina. That's impressive. That is really, really impressive. Now, we talked about this earlier on the Irish Breakdown show. And in any other scenario, and if this were one of maybe 2 or 3 other teams, I'd be like, Alabama's going to remember last year. They're going to remember how much they got made fun of for losing to Vanderbilt, gave them their biggest win in program history. But I think this Vanderbilt team is also apt to handle being the visiting team. I mean, look, we talked about it. Diego Pavia has been talking that talk, but so far he's been able to back it up.
Yeah.
And in order to be able to weather that storm of like, oh, we remember last year, to your point, Vince, Diego Pavia's like, yeah, I remember last year too, and I gave you that business. So, hey, it doesn't matter. We're playing on 120 by 53 and a third. Yeah, we're in Tuscaloosa now, but and that's kind of what I'm going off of here.
Yeah, I get it.
But I just, based on who Vanderbilt has been this season, I think this will be a shootout because I don't know if Vanderbilt's defense has the horses to stop Alabama, which is not why I'm not saying Vandy's going to win outright.
Right.
But I think their offense is good enough where they're not going to lose by 2 scores.
Okay.
So I got Vandy plus 10.5, my dog of the week.
You are more of a betting man than I am because I am afraid of this game. I am 100% afraid of this game. So touche to you, my friend, for taking that as your dog of the week. I'm going a different direction. We didn't really discuss this one at all in our show today, so this is going to be a fun one to bring up. Wisconsin goes on the road to that school up north, Michigan, and they're getting 17.5 points. Now, I understand that Wisconsin is not exactly a juggernaut of a team, and my issue here is that neither is Michigan. I'm just not sure Michigan knows who Michigan is at this point. Can they put up big numbers? They've scored a little, but they've also given up a bunch. And then there's Wisconsin. And I don't think I know Wisconsin doesn't know who they are. But 17.5 is still a big number for two teams that want to run the ball. They do want to grind it out. I mean, Michigan will obviously throw the football around. It's tough for me to see Michigan pulling away from Wisconsin. Now, again, Wisconsin is not a great team. They are coming off a 2-game losing streak. They give up points. Again, I'm just not super confident that Michigan can score consistently. So I'm taking a chance here with this one, and it very well be my hatred for Michigan coming out. But I'm going to take the Badgers and the 17.5 points. I'm hoping that the Badgers can stay inside 17.5 to get me to 6-1 for my dog of the week. Go Badgers.
I like it, man. I like it. And listen, talk about being a betting man. I would follow the guy that's currently 5-1. I think DJ said it best. Big spread for what will most likely be a low total.
That I agree, DJ. That's why that one caught my eye. I think 17.5 is a lot of points for a situation where I don't know that there's going to be a lot of points scored. And so that's really kind of what made me go in that direction. And I believe that's a noon start. The over-under is 43.5, which is not a big number. So 17.5 is a big number versus the 43.5. So to your point, DJ, it's one of the reasons it caught my eye. So dog of the week, Wisconsin. Let's go, baby.
If you would have told me at the start of the season that the over-under in the Michigan-Wisconsin game was going to be a point higher than the Texas-Florida game, I would have laughed in your face.
Correct.
But this is why we love college football, because you just never know what you're going to get.
That's all I'm saying.
Well, listen, folks, that's going to do it for this week's edition of the Spread Option here on the CFB Nation podcast. Please be sure to spread the word about this show. CFB Nation channel, share the link to this show. You can also find it on the podcasting streaming platforms on Apple Podcasts, Spotify Podcasts. We're really trying to – there we go. Okay, Vince. Did they I have not been keeping track of the playoffs.
3-1, baby. Almost blew it in the 9th inning. But the Cubs are moving on to play the division foe Milwaukee Brewers. Best of 5 starting on Saturday. So, I mean, they were up 3-0. They gave up a solo shot and hit 2 guys in the 9th inning. But whatever. They still got the win. It's all good. Moving on, baby. Let's go.
It's playoff baseball, man. Win in advance.
That's right.
Win in advance. I love it. Well, listen, folks, please be sure to share this show. Anybody that loves college football, loves talking about betting. And again, you don't have to be a bettor to follow this show. But make sure you hit that like button. Make sure you subscribe to this channel. But until next time, we will see you back here next week. That's Vince. I'm Trevor. See you back here very soon on the Spread Option.